Chances are you've heard the urban myth that public speaking is the number one fear among Americans. But this is really an artifact of people manipulating statistics. If you look, for example, at this chart from the Washington Post, it makes it look like public speaking is the number one fear, followed by other fears such as drowning, claustrophobia, strangers, zombies, and even ghosts. However, the data that this is based on says that about 26% of Americans say that they fear public speaking. However, Chapman University publishes an annual survey of the top fears of Americans. This is where the Washington Post got their data from, by the way. But if you look at this whole list, you'll have to scroll all the way down to number 59 on the list to find public speaking among the top fears among Americans. So, is it the number one fear and greater than death? No, it's not. But it definitely is something that Americans are concerned about when faced with the prospect of giving a speech. So everyone faces at least a little bit of anxiety when giving a speech. Today's video gives you 3 tips about overcoming some of that anxiety. Will it reduce your anxiety down to 0? Chances are it won't. But this will help at least reduce your anxiety to a manageable level so that you can give a successful speech. First on the list is to practice your speech until it flows smoothly. Often when we're confronted with a task that we find unpleasant or that causes anxiety, we procrastinate. We put things off. So we're faced with giving a public speech, and instead of facing it and practicing as much as we should, we put it off. We avoid that uncomfortable stimuli. But if you force yourself to practice, by the time the day of your speech comes around, you'll feel far more confident than if you didn't practice. Think about anything, any task that you have. The more times you do it, the more you feel comfortable with it. Now that doesn't mean that you'll breeze right through it and you'll feel no anxiety whatsoever, but it does mean that the more you practice, the less your anxiety. The second tip in reducing anxiety is to focus on your audience rather than on yourself. Too often people give a speech, and when they get up in front of an audience, they can't stop thinking about how they feel. Which is natural because some people do have physical reactions to those situations. But if we try not to focus on that and to focus on our audience instead, we'll have a much easier time of it. All the way through when we write the speech to when we deliver the speech, the focus should be on the audience. What's best for the audience? Not how do I feel about this, not how do I look, but how will the audience feel about my material? Have I explained things clearly? Am I presenting the speech in an animated manner to help the audience enjoy it better? These are the kind of questions you want to ask yourself instead of an inward focus on how you feel about the speech. The third tip that will help you alleviate anxiety associated with public speaking is don't expect perfection. Let's try a quick analogy here. Suppose I've asked you to come play tennis with me, and you've never played tennis before. We go out and we hit the ball around, but being it's your first time, you hit the ball into the net a lot. Well, what if you got angry and stormed off the court and said, I'm just no good at this. I'm not going to do this anymore. Or what if you say, I've seen Roger Federer play tennis before. I've seen Serena Williams play tennis before. They rarely hit the ball into the net. I hit the ball into the net all the time. This just isn't for me. I'll never get any better. That's expecting perfection. And in the tennis example, it seems kind of ridiculous to think, I'm going to go out there and hit 100% of the balls over the net every time I hit the ball. But people do this all the time with public speaking. They think, well, if I screw up something small in my speech, it's a huge failure. You have to let go of those catastrophic expectations and not expect perfection. Even the best speakers in the world still don't give a perfect speech every time they go out. They spend a lot of time practicing and giving speeches to multiple audiences before they even feel comfortable with the material. The same thing applies to you. You can do a good job, but you shouldn't expect perfection every time you go out. To summarize, there are 3 things that you can do to reduce your public speaking anxiety. The first one is practice your speech until it flows smoothly. The more you practice, the less anxiety you feel. Don't procrastinate practicing and preparing for your speech. 2, focus on your audience rather than on yourself. And 3, don't expect perfection. None of us are great the first time we try something new, so don't expect perfection every time you give a public speech. Some of the best public speakers I know still experience some level of public speaking anxiety even after giving hundreds and sometimes thousands of speeches. But your goal shouldn't be to reduce your public speaking anxiety level to 0. Your goal is simply to take whatever anxiety level you have, employ tactics to reduce it, and still give a successful public speech.